OMGesus, boys, girls, and twins, welcome back. It is the return, the big comeback for the Copilot Enabled. I am joined here by Mr. Nairman, who has been absent for 2 weeks doing his own thing. He's very selfish like that. He's going off and meeting fans and trying to engage with them. What were you thinking, sir?
It's called having a social life.
It's called being way more popular than you are, that's what it is. How are you, sir? How are you doing? How was your trip?
My trip was good and everything's going great.
Excellent. I saw a lot of stuff on your Twitter that the MomoCon looked pretty fun to hang out with a lot of people, hang out with some fans. How'd that go? Was there anything of noteworthy, interesting?
Just that we recorded a lot and now I'll be going up Monday, so yay!
Awesome. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into the Copod for the week. Now, first and, most interesting thing to me at least is that Ultra Street Fighter 4 got a PS4 release over the last couple of weeks. Now, the big reason for that is that because Capcom have actually partnered with Sony for basically for Street Fighter from now on. Essentially, Street Fighter 5 is going to be a PS4 exclusive. It won't be appearing on Xbox One at all. It will be appearing on PC. And as also they've got now the next gen port of Street Fighter 4 on PS4. That's not the really interesting thing about that. The really interesting thing about that is that it is broken as fuck. The game came out and day one was just revealed to have a ton of bugs in it. Characters did not function as they should. Moves did not function as they should. You got lots of weird glitches, like Jury was able to do a double team move where she appeared in two places at once, for just really weird crap like that. And you know, I feel like we're a bit of a broken record lately, because this is hardly the first time we've done an episode of the podcast where we've talked about games that were broken on release.
Why do fighting games keep being broken upon release? We just want to play them.
It's not just fighting games, it's everything. I mean, you know, obviously Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, you know, a few months back was obviously a big topic of conversation when that came out.
True, but it seems particularly noticeable with fighting games lately over everything else.
Yeah, now, what's kind of interesting about this is that Capcom themselves did not actually handle the port. They gave it to a third-party company who, frankly, have little to no experience in doing ports, so I guess it really begs the question of why. Why would a company go and do something? I mean, it's one thing to develop for a new console, I understand that it's new, it's different, although the PS4 has been out for over a year now, so it's not really that new. But, you know, why would they go ahead and give it to a company which has no track record with this kind of thing, and be surprised when this is not only the result, but the fact that it was so broken on release? I mean, I can understand if they had problems with porting the game, that's one thing, but to actually just go, nope, fuck it, let's just put it out there. And it's been catastrophic for them. I mean, you know, this was supposed to be Sony's really big PR stunt in terms of like the fighting game area, because, you know, it was, as I said, it's PS4 exclusive. It's not going to be on Xbox One either. You know, in the Evolution 2015 tournament, the EVO 2015 was going to be running the PS4 version of Street Fighter 4. You know, exclusively from now on. So obviously that's a big PR coup for Sony, and instead they've gone ahead and announced now that they're actually going to be moving back to the Xbox 360 version for 2015, which has got to be pretty embarrassing for them.
Oh, definitely. It's just one of those, did no one test this? I mean, if these things were that easy to find to the point where everyone found them like day one, whereas there's just no testing for this, do they just not find any of this? It just really kind of baffles the mind on how all these broken games just get out and no one seems to care on the development side.
Yeah, it really does. It boggles my mind, and it kind of reminds me, for anyone who watches my stream, which is on Twitch TV /Red_Gambit, plug, that we did a playthrough of Silent Hill 3 and Silent Hill 2 HD very recently, and that was ported by Hijinx Studios. And what was interesting to me about that is that it relates to this topic because that was also pretty broken. It wasn't broken to the extent that Ultra Street Fighter 4 was, thank God. But there were a lot of crashes, there were a lot of sound glitches, things like that, and you just kind of wonder, I don't know, I mean, it's like, how hard can it be to do QA, really? I mean, honestly, these things cannot go unnoticed.
Yeah, it just kind of makes me wonder if they just think that when the day of patches and online sort of connectivity that they'll just fix everything later, they just want to ship it out, but this is getting pretty ridiculous. It gets to the point where I don't feel comfortable getting any games day one anymore unless it's like from Nintendo or a really trusted developer or something like that.
Yeah, it really is. It's eroding consumer confidence in the products, and that's the part that I find most concerning. Now, obviously, yeah, Capcom gone ahead and released a patch for the game already. I haven't tested it out myself because I don't have a PS4. But is this? I mean, once again, how does this stuff get past QA? How does this stuff get released? Is it the mindset of? I mean, there are only two real options in my mind. I'm not a game developer, so I don't know these things. But looking at it logically, it's either they are aware of the bugs and they just can't afford to. Maybe they have a very limited budget. I don't know. Maybe they just go, well, we can't afford to fix these. Let's just see if anyone notices and react accordingly. Or B, they're just grossly incompetent. Those are the only two reasonable explanations that I can think of off the top of my head.
And neither of them sound any good.
No, they're not good. But I mean, what do you have any? Do you have another theory, or is that kind of it for you as well?
No, those are pretty much the only two I have. Unfortunately, I don't know which one I would rather take at this point. Ultimately, it's just a question of confidence at this point on developers, because this is getting worse and worse to the point where it's making it iffy to where people would even buy games. So this is hurting them more than it's hurting us as consumers at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It is becoming a problem in terms of being able to buy games, and that's maybe that is why the companies are pushing more and more the pre-order bonuses and things like that. But I guess we won't know about that. Anyway, that's kind of enough on Street Fighter. I just wanted to really just vent my spleen more than anything else regarding that. Let's talk about some other releases that have come out very recently. Let's talk about Splatoon, because that came out very recently. That was the Wii's first big shooter in a very, very long time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically Nintendo's kind of answer to the shooter craze that's been going on the last number of years. All I can say is, as the first week, it's very fun. It suffers from a little bit of lack of content, but according to Nintendo, and so we've been getting so far, of only in the first week that we've already gotten 2 kind of weapon packs, that a lot of stuff's going to be coming out during the summer, so they'll be adding more and more as the game goes on.
Yeah, now, I actually downloaded the global test fire. I did not actually get a chance to play it because, again, I was streaming, which is a plug, but who cares? But I was actually tempted to get it because I got a little message popping up on my Wii U handheld console, little thingy view screen, which said, oh, you can get this game for cheap now because you downloaded the global test fire. And I was tempted to get it, but then I was looking at my Twitter feed and looking at people who had already bought the game, and they were essentially saying that the game has Titanfall syndrome, in that it is a full-price game, which is essentially a elaborate demo in terms of like the amount of content being put on offer. What are your thoughts on that?
I can agree with that to some degree. Ultimately, it does have a little bit of lack of content because you're only limited to select few of like 6 maps are available right now. But there are a lot of weapons to choose from and more coming along the way. They'll be adding some new modes later, so I'm not sure how accurate it is to beat Titanfall, if only because they already said a lot of the DLC, if not most of it, is going to be completely free. So I don't mind it too much, but I can agree there. It does have a little bit of a lack of content. It's mostly just something you would rather do with your friends or just to kill some time rather than be a fully dedicated online kind of shooter compared to the Call of Duties and Battlefields and so forth. But unlike those, it actually has a single-player mode worth of shit, so yay on that front.
Well, I suppose my question in that regard is that Splatoon is a game which has not had a short development cycle. We've known about it for at least, I think, 18 months or 2 years is my recollection. So I guess that kind of begs the question of, if it's been in development for that amount of time, why is it being released in this, I wouldn't say unfinished, but this partial state? Why are they releasing it in a state where they're going, okay, there'll be new maps coming along, there'll be new DLC coming along, and if it was paid, you go, okay, well, I understand why that, you're assholes and you want to make money. But if they're releasing it when it's free, why wouldn't they just hold off a little bit longer and release it as a more complete game, I would ask?
We've only really known about it for a year, since last E3 is when they announced it. But as far as I can tell for that, it's mostly because Nintendo has absolutely nothing to really release this year until the end, and with even that case, unless there are some big announcements at E3, we really don't have much of an idea of what they're going to be doing this year either, so they kind of wanted something out for the summertime months to satiate the kids and the families and all that, so I think that's probably why. But I think it's also they wanted to try a lot more DLC-focused kind of game, one that will constantly be updated and evolving as time goes on. Because Smash Brothers, they wanted to have a complete game out the door from the get-go, because if it were riddled with DLC characters or something, then a lot of people would probably be pissed off. So I think this is more of an experiment for Nintendo rather than a full-fledged game in some regards, but ultimately it's still pretty fun, so I do recommend it. But if you're worried about content, maybe wait for a little bit of a price drop or wait for some holiday money or something.
I have heard that the online multiplayer mode is actually quite competitive and actually pretty tightly focused. What's been your experience with that?
There is basically casual multiplayer modes and ranked multiplayer modes. In the ranked multiplayer modes, you basically get no experience for losing, and you basically run into the best players, and man, they will kick your ass if you're not paying attention. It's basically very competitive because a lot of adults play, because it's, you know, the image of made for 7-year-olds, adults play it, made for adults, kids play it sort of thing. But it's very competitive, but it's not so much so that you can't even still enjoy it even when you're losing, because the goal isn't to kill everyone, it's to cover the most area. So even if you're not good, you can still be doing something that benefits the team rather than be going around killing people if you're not good at that. So you can find some way to at least contribute to your team versus kind of sucking it up the entire time.
Now, one of the questions I did have is that you did have a chance to play the global test fire. So I'm kind of curious. I know that a lot of feedback from when they did those 2 test fires that the roller was OP, was the biggest thing I heard from that. Is that something? Do you see any kind of noticeable difference between when you played it on the test fire and when the actual final version was released?
Well, the final version has a lot more weapons and a lot more customization, so you can kind of make your own thing, which suits you a lot better. The roller is still kind of OP. It's basically a one-hit kill if you manage to hit with it. It does cover a lot of ground pretty quickly, so it is somewhat OP, but nowhere near as bad as it was during the global test fire, where you only had 4 weapons to choose from and 2 of them were completely worthless. So it's not too OP, but it's still one of the better weapons to use, especially if you're new at the game.
Okay, fair enough. Alright, cool. Well, let's move on from Splatoon onto the most polar opposite game that I can possibly think of, which is Hatred, which is a indie game which was developed for the PC and released about a week ago, which is a game which is essentially about spree killing. Have you heard of this game, sir?
I've heard the name, but that's about it. What's it about?
It is about spree killing, as I said. You play probably the most stereotypical looking goth man-child that you've ever seen in your entire life. A big dude with long hair and wears a trench coat and all kinds of shit. And essentially he has just had it with humanity as a whole and is going out to kill as many people as possible. That's the entire point of the game. It's an isometric twin-stick shooter, and that's really it. That's all there is to it. Now, I will say there is a caveat to this, is that I have not played this game. I kind of actually refuse to pay money for it on principle, which I'll get to in a moment. But I have seen a lot of videos on it. I have read the articles, and that's kind of what it's really just about. It's black and white. It has a kind of a unique aesthetic in that it is black and white, but it has color in certain parts of it, things like that. But no, you just walk out of your door of your house, loaded to the teeth with an arsenal, and just start killing people. And even if you don't want to, the police show up for some reason, I guess, and kind of force you into a confrontation anyway.
So it's one of those artsy-fartsy games without really having a point to it.
No, it's not even really artsy-fartsy, and this is kind of the point that I'm getting to, is that this is a game, as I said, it's about spree killing. It's about going out and killing as many people as possible. None of them, it's not like True Lies, where she's like, have you ever killed anyone? And then he goes, yeah, but they're all bad. No, these people who aren't bad. These are just people who are normal, men, women, children, all that kind of thing, and you just run them through the streets just killing as many as humanly possible. And that's the objective of the game. That's not actually the part that pisses me off. I don't really care about that. The part that pisses me off about this game is the fact that it is a game which is clearly designed to court controversy. It's clearly designed to get the heckles up of the conservatives and the people who are against video games and argue that they're a form of violence and will taint the minds of our children and things like that. It's clearly just targeted those kind of people just to really piss them off. And it's working to an extent because it got a lot of free coverage. It got got coverage in a lot of online websites, magazines, and things like that. And when this is a game which is like it looks pretty good for an indie game. It's built on the Unreal Engine. They seem to know what they're doing with it. So it's not just a shonky piece of crap from what I know. But it just kind of bothers me that it's such an obvious attempt to really just get the heckles up of the old people who want kids to get off their lawn, and they gave them exactly what they wanted, and now it's quite successful from what I understand.
Well, that's kind of an easy way to get sales, is to drum up controversy. Other mediums do this all the time, so it's not exactly new. It's just kind of a weird thing to do for a game, especially when you probably don't have much confidence as the gameplay. I mean, have you been hearing that the game's any good at all?
No, I mean it's not terrible from what I understand. I think from what I've heard, it's competent, but it's not really good because it's just the same thing over and over. You just run through an area, kill everything, and try not to die.
Yeah, that doesn't sound terribly interesting for more than about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, so I guess, what really is the question here is that we as gamers kind of hope that we're past this, that we're kind of past the era of, of Mortal Kombat where, people just absolutely lost their shit when Fox News was running around screaming that, what did someone think of the children when Sub-Zero ripped out Scorpion's spine and held it up for the screen? We kind of hope that we are past that as a society, and this game kind of proves to me that we really, while it's definitely not the same scale as that, it's not, hasn't caught at that level of controversy, we're definitely not past it either.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. It's just something that I'm kind of just rolling my eyes at this point, considering it's not that influential of a game, so I think they're just doing it for the free coverage more than anything, so it's not something I want to pay much attention to. I don't want to give it too much of a look at, considering I don't really care. So I'm really kind of just looking forward to just ignoring it and going about my way more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose really the interesting thing beyond that is even the way the games media has kind of responded to it as well. That first of all, Steam actually blocked the game from the Greenlight store and then quickly reinstated it after there was a big sort of uproar from the other side of gaming, where they're saying like, oh, what about freedom of speech? What about being able to express ourselves? It shouldn't matter if this game is offensive. It's not breaking any laws. So there's kind of that, and then also Twitch, I believe just about a week ago, went ahead and banned people from streaming adults-only games, which is, given the timing of Hatred's release, is almost certainly a direct response to that game being played on Twitch.
That's pretty interesting. I can understand why they would get rid of adults-only games, considering 99.9% of those are basically just porn at this point, but it's just one of those. I can understand why they would be doing this, but at the same time, it's just one of those, why do we even care at this point? We're just kind of feeding the fire at this point, so can we just please move on?
Yeah, exactly. I would really just rather just shrug my shoulders and just let it stand on its own merits, which apparently isn't, that remarkable, so let it be swallowed up by the abyss of history, I guess, is kind of what I was really hoping and would hope can happen at some point. But yeah, I think we talked about that long enough. I just really wanted to get that off my chest more than anything else. So let's move on to the Video Game Hall of Fame. This is something that you wanted to discuss. What can you tell us about that?
Well, first off, we have our first inductees of Pong, Pac-Man, Super Mario Bros., Tetris, and World of Warcraft. So, first off, what do you think about the inductees?
Not bad. I think that there's obviously quite a few obvious choices in there, like Mario Bros., Pong, and whatnot. World of Warcraft getting in the first round, I think, is kind of impressive. But more than that, like for people who don't know about this Hall of Fame, where is it? What's the purpose of it? How prestigious is this? Is it like are they being inducted in someone's garage? Does he have? Excuse me, does he have like a garage sale going on next to that? What's going on with that?
Apparently it's called the World Video Game Hall of Fame, and it seems pretty legit considering all the votes were by gaming journalists and academics from places like Georgia Tech, New York University, etc., etc. So it seems fairly legit. It's just one of those, we'll see how it lasts, considering I've seen this happen a few times before where people try and make kind of a Hall of Fame for this, but we'll just kind of have to see. It seems legit enough, but it needs to last a few years before it gains any sort of legitimacy, but ultimately, it seems pretty interesting. I guess they'll do more next year. We'll have to see.
Okay, so when you get inducted into the Hall of Fame, what does that exactly get you aside from like a fancy plot? Can people go along and see, like, is it like a virtual thing, or can people go along and see exhibits about these kind of games, or what's the deal?
It doesn't really say. I'm imagining that they have kind of a place to play the games is what I would be expecting, but have like arcade cabinets for the old games, or like a PC setup with Warcraft or something, with like a demo of Warcraft or something, but it doesn't really say. It just seems kind of like right now it seems more of a kind of a write-in thing versus an actual museum, but we'll have to see as it goes on. I'm okay with that for now, considering most of these games are pretty much freeware at this point, so you can play them anytime you want. But we'll just have to see as it goes forward. Most of these things tend to struggle for the first 5 to 10 years, and then they start to get legitimacy, at least as far as what I've read of other Hall of Fames, like the Rock and Roll or Baseball Hall of Fame. So I guess time will tell if we'll get our own kind of museum.
Fair enough. Yeah, as I said, I mean, kind of obvious choices. I do like the fact that World of Warcraft got it now. Have they made any mention of what's going to happen in the future, or is it just, as you said, we just have to really wait and see?
We really just have to wait and see at this point. They haven't really mentioned any future. They did announce what was on the ballot for everything else that didn't get in, so things we could potentially see for next year, but yeah, it's just kind of an interesting idea to see if it actually gains any traction compared to other attempts in the past.
Fair enough. Alright, well, let's move on from there to what will probably be the final topic, aside from just random gibberish, as we like to do at the end of the podcast, is that Dragon Ball Xenoverse is getting some more DLC. We have reached the part of the podcast where Nearman and I decide to bitch about blue hair on Saiyans.
Yay, and Golden McFrieza.
Have you had a chance to see the new movie yet, or has it still not been released for you guys?
It comes out here in 2 months.
Oh, wow, really? Is it going to be an English dub, or are they just dragging their ass on that?
I think it's going to be an English dub and actually be in theaters and stuff, so yeah.
Okay, I mean, well, theaters, I mean, it was in theaters in Japan, so you'd think they could just, bring the hard drives over, but at least if it's going to be an English dub, that's something, I guess. On that topic, I mean, dubs versus subs, what's your preference for Dragon Ball?
I grew up with the dub for Dragon Ball, so I tend to prefer the English version of Dragon Ball Z more than anything else.
Yeah, I have to say I kind of prefer the same for Dragon Ball. I remember when I first got into it that it had been around for a while because it just came out in Australia, which had been around in America and whatnot for years, and people didn't really mind, I think, the dub so much. It was just the music that really drove people nuts. People really preferred, the hardcore fans, as they always do, really preferred the original Japanese music for it, which I always thought kind of sucked, honestly.
Yeah, I'm pretty ambivalent to the music. I do like Bruce Faulkner's music for certain things, whereas I prefer the Japanese for certain things, but that's just kind of a toss-up at this point. I've always just been more of a dub person in general, just because it's easier to watch what's going on screen versus having to read and watch at the same time. Not that I can't do it, I've trained myself after all these years to do so, but, dubs just make things easier for me to pay attention to, so I'm generally more of a dub person than a sub person, but I'm perfectly fine with both.
Yeah, I have to admit I'm kind of the same. If given the option between watching the dub or the sub, I will probably just watch the dub out of laziness more than anything else. I have no problem with the sub at all. And there have been some very good dubs over time. I mean, I'm definitely not a hardcore anime fan these days. I just kind of watch it very casually. But I mean, an obvious example would be, the finest anime ever made, which I think very few people would dispute, being Cowboy Bebop, actually had a really fucking good English dub to it, which is one example where it's done right at least.
Yeah, so much so that the Japanese producers actually preferred the English version compared to the Japanese version, so it can happen. It's getting more and more common, at least, so that's good. So.
Wow, I didn't actually know that they preferred that way.
Yeah, apparently they were meant to be speaking English, but because they're Japanese, they of course spoke Japanese for the broadcast and all that stuff, so they actually prefer the English version of Cowboy Bebop compared to the Japanese version.
Interesting. So yeah, Blue Hair Goku and Vegeta and Golden Frieza are coming out for Dragon Ball Xenoverse. Are you in any way at all interested in the slice bit about this?
Not really, considering it's not really going to change anything gameplay-wise. It's mostly cosmetic at this point.
They're actually bringing out campaigns for it. I mean, they've already put out some DLC campaigns, which I have done on this YouTube channel very recently, in fact. Do we know anything about that, or is it just oh, here's the character, now shut up and go play them?
I think it's just the characters at this point, unless they want to do kind of a Resurrection F story arc to it, but all I've been reading is that the characters are coming to Xenoverse at some point.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that really bothered me about Xenoverse is that, I'm not a hardcore fan of Dragon Ball, but I do like it. I have seen most of it, at least, not the new movies, but I have seen pretty much just about everything else. As a fan of that, I was actually kind of bothered that, the furthest that I could go in that game, I don't know how far you've actually managed to play it so far, the first I could get was Super Saiyan 2 for my Super Saiyan character. And that was it. You couldn't do Super Saiyan 3, you couldn't do Super Saiyan 4, although I'm not really sure why you'd want to. You couldn't do Super Saiyan God, you couldn't do anything else like that, and I'm obviously assuming that when this DLC comes out, you won't be able to do Super Saiyan God mode Super Saiyan for your character either. And in a game where it's kind of the whole point is fan service, where you get to make your own character and be a part of this universe, I think it's kind of a missed opportunity there, that just because they're too lazy to obviously fuck with the hair modeling to actually incorporate that kind of thing.
Yeah, it just seems kind of like they wanted to keep all the main characters from the show the strongest, while your character kind of just supports, which is kind of the wrong way to do it, in my opinion, but that's ultimately just me. I do hope that they at least kind of make it sort of a downloadable patch that you can do more with your character from transformations. I guess they didn't want the Saiyan characters to be too overpowered compared to the humans or the Namekians, whatever.
Well, I mean, it's more of a cosmetic thing than anything else. I don't care if, like, on paper that the sort of Saiyans are as powerful as a Namekian or a human or anything like that. I just want the really fucking cool looking hair.
Yeah, I can understand that.
That's really it for me. I like playing dress up. I make no secret about that. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer to me that I can never get the Super Saiyan 3 hair or anything else. So obviously this isn't really a conversation that has any bearing or anything. It's just kind of me more just making an observation, I suppose.
Definitely. I mean, ultimately, when you make the characters too powerful like they do in the show, then you kind of have like 3 characters to choose from. But I can understand your complaint there that you just kind of want the option there to at least look like they're playing as Super Saiyan 3 or God or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Do we have any more news on the new series that's coming out or anything like that?
All we know is that it comes out July 5th.
Fair enough. Well, I think that's going to do it just about now for the Co-Pod Mail. We're sorry that we had to skip the last couple of weeks. I blame Nairman for that entirely. Please send all of your hate mail towards him. That's going to do it for us. Is there anything that you want to talk about? Is there anywhere else that people can meet you, talk to you, hug you, smell you, things like that?
You can find me on Twitter at NairmanBSC, or you can find me on my channel at BrainscratchComms.
Alright, that's going to do it for us right now. Thanks very much, guys, for watching, and we will see you all very soon.